I'm pleased to be joined from Hong Kong by Dr. Marcos Liu, Central Committee member of the New People's Party, and Nixie Lam, board member of the United Nations Association of China, both joining us from Hong Kong. Welcome to both of you to The Point. Ms. Lam, let me go to you first. So this is the very first chief executive election in the city since changes were made to the electoral system in March last year. Now, what we know that the election committee, for instance, expanded from 1,200 members to 1,500 members. And the election committee is also responsible for selecting the CE and for also nominating candidates who want to run for the post. A qualification review committee of the Hong Kong HKSAR is also set up to vet and confirm the qualification, the background of any potential CE candidates. We've had chief executive elections over the past 25 years, and we've had 5 chief executives elected in the old system. Why the changes were necessary now?
I think it's pretty important as a city looking for its leader. It's always about how capable for a leader to lead the city. I think what has been happening previously in Hong Kong is a lot of the political figures in Hong Kong was trying to sell to the Hong Kong residents and also international world that we need somebody that is willing to be at the city and destroy the city. I think that is something is totally unacceptable. No nations or no cities will accept leaders like that. But a lot of people were manipulated by a lot of political saying or whatever. So I think that's not a good situation. And Hong Kong's been wasting way too much time in arguing, in playing like throwing stuff and stuff in the chambers, and also stopping the governments on doing the real things. As we all know, especially in this today's world, is things goes really fast. I mean, technologies be pushing like government agendas like very forward. You have to react very fast. But we've been wasting way too many times in basically arguing, and nothing could be done.
Under the current electoral system, the CE designate would be voted by secret ballot out of the 1,500 election committee members, and then appointed by the central government before officially become the next CE. Then people would say the CE, of course, receives the support of the central government, but how much room is there for Hong Kong people's voices to be represented in the process? Because this is not the kind of universal suffrage that many people, especially in the West, were hoping for Hong Kong. This is done in the 1,500 people election committee. Dr. Liu, how do you look at the kind of representation that Mr. John Lee actually enjoys vis-a-vis the general public of Hong Kong?
The electoral committee is widely represent the voices of a society. It contains the local, national, and international business communities, as well as the professionals, as well as the grassroots organizations. So it, to me, is a better representation. And as John Lee's claimed that he's gonna have the result-oriented approach. So that's what we need for the Hong Kong right now. As Nixie said, we have been going nowhere over the past 2 years due to pandemics and the riots in 2019. And we need a man who can lead Hong Kong back to its normal state and back to its prosperity.
So the question people would ask is, how are these members of the election committee selected or elected?
It's a lot of the Western audience might misunderstand the representation of the 1,500 representatives to say, well, this is not universal suffrage because they only such a small amount of people are voting for Hong Kong. But if you believe so, then you shouldn't vote for any political figures, because as a representative in your own constituency, when you vote in the Western world, they represent for you and vote in the chambers as well. So the thing goes like that for the chief executive, like those electoral committee members. We are actually selected by different sectors that they represent. Say I'm actually from the before I become a legislator, I'm actually a representative or the EC electoral committee member from the All China Youth. We also have women sectors where the women can actually represent and talk about women's issues in their areas. And we also have religious groups that represent different religions, including like Christian or Catholics or Muslim or things like that. So everybody is actually representing the little sectors of the society. So it is actually a mini society representing everyone in the 1,500 people. So I think we really need to make that point clear.
But this time, what sets this race apart from previous ones was also that John Lee was the only nomination to run for the CE. Marcos, some people are saying, look, there's no competitiveness, it's but a rubber stamp election. What's your reaction to that? Help us understand why he was the only one who got nominated.
So first of all, competitions is not a prerequisite for good and responsible governance. And if you look at the case of US, the bipartisan competitions, I mean, contribute to a lot of conflicts in the society. Because for democracy, I mean, one size doesn't fit all, right? I mean, for the Western countries, they shouldn't obsess with one man, one vote, this kind of blind faith. And for Jones, if you look at his campaign, I think it's well said. Over the past month, he has visited nearly all the EC members to propose his idea of result-oriented approach and also his manifesto. And that's how he gathered all the support and turns out to be a high vote in his elections.
But Nixie, were there other people running for the race, but they didn't get the necessary votes for nomination needed to go to the next step, which is to be candidate to enter the race against John Lee. What happened there?
Well, it's just like the same old election thing. You have some candidates that are not totally eligible. As one of the voter, I can clearly see that they are in competence to become the leader of Hong Kong. So that's why I think if they actually contacted me, they call my phone number and ask for a meeting. But I read the profile and everything. I don't think they're capable, so I didn't even spend time to meet them. But I know some of the people to say, well, maybe I will consider. But after reading some of the interviews that they did with the media, it doesn't really make sense. I think, as I mentioned earlier, we really need a strong leader to lead us out of what has been happening for the past 2-3 years. We went through the rioting, a whole year of rioting, and then we went through the pandemic and things like that. And we're still not recovering. And things are getting really complicated with the local economic situation and also international pressures and stuff like that. Hong Kong needs to find a place to situate themselves and to make the international world believe in Hong Kong again. So I think we really need a strong leader. I mean, John Lee has been a very seasoned government officials, and he knows what's been happening. And he actually helped a big hands into tackling on the national security issues, which is totally complicated. It's not something that is so easy.
Some media suggested that the changes in the electoral procedure is a departure from the promise of ultimate goal of universal suffrage that's stipulated in the Basic Law of Hong Kong. And I'm going to read out that specific provision, which is Article 45 of the Basic Law, which says the executive of the Hong Kong SAR shall be selected by election through consultations held locally and appointed by the Central People's Government. The method for selecting the CE shall be specified in the light of the actual situation of the Hong Kong SAR and in accordance with the principles of gradual and orderly progress. The ultimate aim is the selection of the CE by universal suffrage upon nomination by a broadly representative nominating committee in accordance with the democratic procedures. Nixie, how do you see the development of the changes to the electoral system and this selection and the election of John Lee in vis-a-vis the realization of this particular article, that's Article 45 of the Basic Law?
Yeah, I think the key point is on the board representation. We only see the increase of number But increase on the diversity and the representative of Hong Kong is the key point on how we add on from 1,200 to 1,500. As I mentioned before, we don't have a youth representative, we don't have religious representative, we don't have women representative previously. It's quite heavily leaning on only commercial sectors. That's
you
why
mean in the past?
Yes, in the past. And that's why a lot of people in the past in Hong Kong were saying, well, it's only on the big guys. How about us? How about some of the grassroots associations? This time we have a grassroots association sectors where some of the grassroots associations been working in different constituencies and different local and trying to tap into different poverty matters and try to do the support group, working very locally. But previously they don't have any says on all those elections. But this time, after the electoral reform, they are in. They can talk about their issues, and it is very important this time. This is the first time during the whole election day, he invited everybody to go to his Facebook and leave their messages. And I went through a lot of the message, and that's something is more, previously all those like policy will be like the big policies, right? We need to make Hong Kong's economy good, but how good? Like for constituency, some of the Hong Kong local residents, they just have a little dreams on how to have a better life and things like that. And those little message one by one on Facebook is very articulated, very little, but very important for normal Hong Kong people.
Okay, time has run out. We have to leave it there. Many thanks to Dr. Marcos Liu, Central Committee member of the New People's Party, and Nixie Lam, Legislative Council member of Hong Kong, and also board member of the United Nations Association of China. Thank you very much.